Hello, welcome back to the MMA Split podcast. Joined as always by my presenter Josh, is of course myself, Matt. Although I say that, we were of course missing Josh last week when we did the pick show. He was struck down with COVID, very unfortunately. He still wanted to do the podcast. He tried his best, but it just wasn't doable. We had Sly back in for a change. Now that Josh is back, Sly is gone. So no appearance on the
Well,
podcast again
since we changed our production schedule, uh, to
for
what
him.
Sly suggested. Sly hasn't been able to do it once. So yeah, I have still got the vid. Obviously a lot better. Still not 100%, but last week, yeah, we had to move it last minute, and the following day, it hit me hard. So yeah.
Yeah. And although Sly was there for the pick show last week, we weren't able to do a podcast because he had not seen the fights. So we are back. Apologies for the podcast missing last week. It was not our intention, although we did get a pick show out. We'll, of course, talk about the results of that pick show. This podcast is going to be pretty much focused on UFC 276, the fallout from UFC 276, the results, the fights, the performances, everything that comes along with it, touching on the PFL as well. And then we're going to be going into a bit more detail on a couple of other things relevant to the UFC and to the pound for pound list, to a couple of theories. None of this is going to be fact. This is our opinion when we get into this. Nobody freak out if we upset anybody or say something they don't want to hear. If you are
Wait, no,
enjoying
no,
the
no, no,
content,
no, no. Yeah, or comment it. If you have any strong feelings, just
true,
comment. We won't
true,
hate you for
comment,
that.
engage, like the videos, subscribe if you're not subscribed, give us feedback, let us know how you're enjoying the channel, let us know what you would like to see more of, and we will oblige. We are planning on doing a bit of a relaunch, so we'll be giving more details on that throughout July, but expect cool things, and the more you let us know, the more we're going to be able to factor them into the changes that we make. So watch this space. As for the UFC, as for MMA, as for UFC 276, in the bag, the most promoted, hyped card of the year without a shadow of a doubt, had a tough ask, having to follow up three of the best cards of the year.
I sense you weren't entertained.
Ultimately, it's not that I wasn't entertained, it's that I don't feel that hype was met. And I think that's difficult to do with these big cards. I think you had some great fights. I think you had some great moments and performances. I would say the card didn't have and didn't gain at any point a sense of momentum. And we'll be getting into all of that. But let's talk about the main event. As John Anik would say, the men around which this card was built. Is he promised some big things against Cannonier? And I got to be honest, I wasn't sure if Cannonier is the guy that you promise these big things against. Cannonier is the guy that you kind of just sort of say, I want to keep my belt. I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to do what I do best. Ultimately, this was a pretty dull fight to watch, and it's becoming a bad habit for Izzy fights, particularly because people have started kind of realized that you can't be overly aggressive against him. And they've seen people like Whitaker, people like Jan Blachowicz have success being patient, not giving him anything, staying on the outside, and looking to clinch up when you can. I don't think that was the game plan that Cannonier really should have gone for. He didn't look comfortable doing it. He kind of seemed to accept defeat. Izzy, listen, he's going to eat a lot of shit, and I think his mouth is not helping him at all. But in terms of fighting ability, man, you take what you're given. If you can tap a guy, outpoint him from the outside, put yourself in no risk or damage, and he's not going to force you to adjust, a smart fighter is going to do that, and a high level martial artist is going to do that, and that is what Izzy is. Does not make it entertaining. Josh, what was your reads on this one? What was your thoughts on this main event? I know you've watched this one a few times through.
Yeah, I routinely find myself in life completely at odds with the general public. I don't understand why people get upset about the things they get upset about. Izzy has to sell a fight. This Cannonier fight is a fight he always wanted because it's an extra title defense against the guy he's never really going to lose to. And he sold the fight quite well. People bought it. Obviously, I look. It's hard to be a counter striker, or it's hard to be exciting as a counter striker. And I apologise, Otis has been quiet all day. He knows as soon as I hit that record button. Hopefully, you can't hear him too much going crazy downstairs. It's hard to be an exciting counter striker. And if I think of someone like Anderson Silva, who would find ways to be exciting as a counter striker, he never should have lost to Chris Weidman that first time. He never should have got caught. And that was the puncher's chance that Cannonier had coming into this one. I think still that Izzy is at his weakest when you force him onto his back foot. You force him to move backwards. Cannonier got that going a little bit. But yeah, Izzy coasted. He just did what he had to do to win the fight. It's another title defense. I'm not sure at what point you wanted to talk about the pay-per-view numbers, but I'll say it right now. They're really in line with where I thought this event would be. Even considering you got the Volkanovsky Holloway trilogy as the co-main.
Well, I want to talk about all of that as kind of its own sort of isolated thing. Looking at the fight, I just feel like Izzy is creating a level of expectation that I'm not sure his style is going to meet. What Izzy is an extremely high-level martial artist with an insane fight IQ. The way that he can set things up, his movement, his elusiveness. Unless a guy is aggressive towards him, he's not going to shine in his best way. He's not going to get the knockouts that we've seen him get, in the UFC that have looked really impressive. Now, it's a bit of an oxymoron because obviously you feel that the guy that can really put him on the back foot is the guy that can beat him. But if you go for that tactic and you fail at it, you're probably going to get destroyed and knocked out by Izzy. So it's a dangerous game, and the one loss that we have in MMA on Izzy's record came from somebody doing the opposite, and so it's created this way for guys to think that they can do it. And listen, it almost worked for Rob, but Rob's a very well-rounded, very specific fighter. He's shorter than Izzy, and fights well, blitzing forwards, so he was able to kind of start getting those takedowns underneath. Not everybody can do that. Jan had size. Whittaker had, just the fact that he's Robert Whittaker, he's one of the best in the world. It wasn't going to be the way that Cannonier won this fight. I just kind of thought that at 38 years old, if he knew he was going to be 3 rounds down or it wasn't looking good, he would just go for it. And he kind of didn't. He just sort of accepted this kind of rhythm and hoped maybe I'm going to get that perfect shot and something's going to work out. And it never did. And
you've already said, though, that it's established that when you try to go for it, that's when he's going to eat you alive. That's where Paulo Costa went wrong. That's where Gastelum put himself in the most trouble. That's where Whittaker went. Well, in the first fight, Whittaker just wasn't really there. But that translated to him just barreling in and getting caught. Cannonier, if he was going to be in the fight all the way to the end, and if he was going to pray against hope that Izzy made some really stupid fundamental slip up with his footwork and he was going to be able to catch him, he was going to have to be patient and wait for it. It's very hard to trap a guy who's got a more educated stand-up game and is a better, longer athlete. Very, very hard to set the traps to kind of outmaneuver them on the footwork, to cut them off, and just to be able to honestly land one hard, clean shot. Izzy's got a chin. You're probably not going to get away with one clean shot either, but for me, it's like, what is Cannonier really going for it against Izzy if he's done his homework actually look like? And I think that's kind of what we got. It's really about as gung-ho as you can be trying to chase that finish, knowing you're at least 3 rounds in the hole going into the 4th. And frankly, I had him losing every round. Some of them were kind of close, but this is exactly what I thought a Cannonier-Izzy fight was going to look like. And fuck, I can only think of one champion who routinely had entertaining fights every time out. And that was the champion that got the least amount of love. That was Mighty Mouse. Every other long dominant champion I can think of, lots of boring fights. Lots of cautious fighting, lots of safe fighting. GSP, boring fighter. Khabib, boring fighter. Just... It doesn't translate to success. And the other thing is, it doesn't matter how good your fights were. It's always about the next fight. It doesn't matter how good or bad your last fight was. That doesn't impact how effectively you can sell the next fight as much as it should.
True.
And you're only ever as good as the last fight. So if you plan on being a dominant champion, doesn't fucking matter. If I'm Izzy, it's water off a duck's back. I'm gonna run my mouth the exact same way for the next one. In fact, for the next one, everyone's gonna want to sell it even more because it's probably going to be Alex Pereira, and I don't think
Oh, it's
Alex
diff.
Pereira is going to beat him with 4 ounce gloves with an MMA rule set.
Well, we'll get to Alex Pereira in a bit. Do you not think though that Izzy's the way Izzy talks isn't necessarily helping himself? Because I understand that he has to sell the fight, but there's an old rule that the WWE used to use all the time, which is that the way that they actually like to build their fights and promote, and obviously they're, you know, predetermined, but it was kind of a rule that neither guy would really ever say that the other guy was shit. And a lot of it was actually trying to make the other guy look amazing. So they'd say, and it's all kind of really corny bullshit, but you get things like, you may be such and such with 8 titles and a D1 wrestling championship and won the gold medal at the Olympics with a broken neck, Kurt Angle, but I think I can beat you. You know, you're actually propping the other guy up. And I think,
Yeah, you're always
you know,
putting
the
the other
way
guy
is
over.
Izzy sold this fight like don't blink, expect the knockout. And when you do that consistently and you don't, and you're fighting tough guys, listen, sometimes you have to do what you have to do, and you're not winning in that way, you're going to end up, you're creating a level of expectation you're not meeting. You're trying to be the Conor McGregor without having the knockouts at the end of it to a certain extent. Whereas if his way of selling this fight had been like, guys, no one realizes how fucking dangerous this dude is. Like, do you realize how dangerous this guy is? Like, you're all freaking out about this guy, Alex Pereira, because he's got power. This guy knocked guys out at heavyweight. You know, there's ways that you can do it. You know, Dominic Cruz was not an entity. A lot of his fights went to decision, and he didn't really big his opponent up. But his way of selling a fight was just being so intelligent with his trash talk about
Yeah,
how he would dismantle his opponents. Now, listen,
but
was
then
he trying to be?
he also runs his mouth when he loses the fight, and even when he lost to Garbrandt, and people were like, "Oh, he's taken this loss quite well." There was still a lot of bitterness to him. You know, they all say the same shit before the fight, and I kind of see where you're coming from. Maybe there were better ways to try and put Cannonier over, and maybe kind of like save your integrity. But honestly, it's like, who's he trying to appease? He just took low hanging fruit. He just did it one of the easiest ways he could do it, and I fully expect him to do the same kind of shit next time out. And in fact, like if you look at just the way I hate when it's Joe Rogan and DC, because both of them are way better than everybody else at towing the company line and taking the time to listen to what the producer wants them to repeat, and then proliferating that narrative for the fight, irrespective of what's actually going on. And they talk in so much fucking hyperbole that we'll move on to it in a sec. But like when they got to the co-main, which for me was a fucking lights out fight, the way they're talking about things sounds cliched when it's actually right on the fucking money. But they're saying this shit all the time, and they'll get away with it because you never really kind of take these things out of context and kind of build up a history of them and be like, yeah, well, you said this about X, Y, and Z fire. How true could it really be? It's like, yeah, everyone's always the most dangerous, everyone's always the best, the most exciting, the most prodigious talent there's ever been. But it's all just sports casting, it's all just hyperbole. Yeah, he's going to chat some shit, he's going to sell his fights. Is it disappointing? Yeah. Should we
Do,
slow down the hype on the next one? Yeah, it probably would. That would be our kind of journalistic duty. But I totally get why he does it. The numbers don't surprise me. The outcome of the fight didn't surprise me. I hoped it was going to be more exciting. I picked a knockout, but
do
Cannonier
you
played a
think?
smart game. Go on, sorry.
Do you think, with that in mind, maybe they made a mistake putting Izzy as the headliner of this type of fight for International Fight Week, in the sense of it was likely to follow this kind of narrative? Um, you know, if you wanted a real barn burner at the top of it, was this the fight that would have done it? I don't know, man. I
Okay,
think
so
maybe that's part of the problem.
yeah, you did say something at the top about how this card never really built momentum. That very fucking rarely happens. And you kind of just got to take what you're given and look at the fights
True,
objectively as individual fights. I would have
true.
loved it if this was the co-main, we were talking about this second, and we got to spend the first 10, 15 minutes of the show talking about Volkanovsky and Holloway, as it should be, in my opinion. Hopefully, they will start to see more and more sense in not just putting the heaviest weight class at the top of the card and actually thinking you've got two of the best in their weight class to have ever done it, going head to head for the third time after two razor close fights. Maybe that's going to be a bit more exciting and a bit more definitive and a bit more of a iconic sports moment than Israel Adesanya against the next guy up after he's basically cleared out the division, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, fuck it. It's UFC, isn't it? They're going to do what they want to do.
True. Cannonier.
Still a good fighter.
Still a good fighter, but listen, he can't beat the best. And I know that he was trying to stick to a game plan, but I think even with Rob as well, when you see that loss, I think he can, when he's up against somebody that's really good and elusive and sets things up, you can kind of see his confidence just break a little bit as it goes forward. You know, I don't think he really believed. He had a little moment in round 3, but all he really did was just get close and manage to clinch up sort of and land a couple of sort of inside shots in the third round. I don't think he really believed at many points that he was going to win. And he tried to not do a lot of media. I think he thought if he just kind of like blew a lot of that stuff off, he could stay focused. But it's tough, man, particularly at 38. It's like, I think you're either going to have like the Glover mentality where you're just completely fearless and you're just like, fuck it, it's my last shot. Let's just leave all the chips on the table. Or it must be so difficult to know this is my one and only shot. Like my age doesn't suggest that I'm going to be back in the picture if I don't win this. Maybe. And I've got to do this for the first time.
It's more than most people get, though. And at the end of the day, Juliana Pena beat Nunes. You're going into a world title fight. Fuck it, just be there, be ready. If for whatever reason the champ's having an off night, you just got to be there and be ready. I think that's as much as anyone could have expected out of Cannonier coming into this weekend at his age.
Yeah.
And just with the stylistic matchup. There's lots and lots of guys in that top 5 that Cannonier can beat. You know, not just on paper, but like you know, he's a real fucking live dog in those matchups. Izzy was a difficult one on paper, and yeah, okay, Izzy didn't have a shit night. Izzy had a pretty competent night. I feel bad for Cannonier. At the same time, you know, the guy came into MMA a little late, came into the UFC at fucking heavyweight. You know, for a guy that has very much been getting ready on the job when the stakes are at its highest, it's always kind of been a little bit of a sense of like, if you lose a couple in a row, you're going home, you know, and you weren't fighting in your natural weight class for a long time. The guy's lived out his fucking dream. It's a shame he's not going to add a UFC title belt to his collection. Very few fucking people get to add a UFC title belt. You never know. You never know, all right? And we're going to talk about that in the co-main as well a little bit on the future of divisions and things, but
yeah,
probably never gets another title shot, right?
Well, should we move on? Yeah. No, I don't think so. Should we move on to the co-main?
At great speed, yes, please. This was a good fight.
Okay, so one of the other reasons why maybe I didn't enjoy this card as much is that I'm an absolute homer when it comes to Max Holloway. Fucking love Max Holloway. I root for Max Holloway. I've wanted Max Holloway to win all 3 of these fights. I still think for the life of me that he won that second fight, as do most of the world.
Maybe the first as well.
Nah, I didn't win the first. I've rewatched that fight. There's no way he won that fight. So I didn't feel good about this going into this third fight, which is why I picked Volkanovski on the pick show, because I felt Volkanovski's improved more. He's just got that extra bit of power. And what happened on Saturday night was nothing short of just domination in really ways. I mean, Max had his little moments here and there, but he just couldn't get his reads. He couldn't get close. He couldn't land. Max looked like he was off all night. didn't have any ability to set anything up, just would try and get close and swing. And even in the pocket, I thought Volkanovski was better. Really cut Max up. You know, this looks a little bit like the Poirier fight, but a bit more one-sided. Fuck, one of the best he's ever done it has lost to Volkanovski 3 times, man. That's it. It's done. You can't argue about it. Even if you think Max won that second fight, it's 2-1, and Volkanovski just put the fucking absolute stamp down. And for Max, it's like, what do you do? What do you do now? Because you're never going to get a title shot where this guy's the champ, and it doesn't sound like even if he moves up, he's giving up his featherweight belt. So, and
Well,
you still,
you say that, bro, but all right, Volkanovski. If one of these two gentlemen were going to move up, all right, Volkanovski would be the first in line for a title shot. But I think if Max wanted to commit to 55, there's a future there for him. Assuming they don't fuck Oliveira over and box him out of the next title shot. You know, Max has got that win over well, what I view as still the current champ. You know, there's a narrative there. He's certainly good enough to hang with the top of the division at 55. He just needs to kind of fill out in his body a little bit more. You know, he was just undersized against Poirier when he steps up for the interim shot.
this is true.
But, you know, if Volkanovski, for whatever reason, wanted to stay at 45, I know Cejudo was getting into it with O'Malley and talking about 35, and he's back in camp and back in the testing pool. But if Cejudo did want to go for a shot at 45, then I don't know, maybe Max could jump ahead of Volkanovski moving up at 55. If Volk moves up to 55, maybe Max takes an interim title shot at 45. You know, which basically would just guarantee that fourth fight if he wanted it. And I think there are reasons to think that, you know, Max theoretically could beat Volkanovski. It's just, first fight, I think, very close. Second fight, certainly very close. This fight, it was just a case that the opening sort of minute, I just saw Volkanovski just instantly picking up on Holloway's like rhythm and movement, always stepping when he was stepping. And it wasn't like, I've been watching you move for the first 20 seconds of this fight, I've got your rhythm. It was, we've almost been fighting for an hour now. I had a good sense of your rhythm coming into this fucking training camp. It's all I've been thinking about the whole fucking time I've been training for this fight. And I am slightly faster. I am slightly more athletic. My instincts are just as sharp as yours. When you move, I move. Volkanovski, for the vast majority of that fight, was constantly just out of range until the later rounds when Max started throwing in like the kicks a lot more. But he was always just out of range and just inside the shots, and he was able to fire off the 1-2, slip inside. Just everything was just very nice. It was almost perfect for him. I couldn't believe he was fighting with a broken hand, to be honest. And Max had to get so fucking creative just to like land the occasional power shot. He had a real nice spinning elbow at the end of the first. He had that spinning body kick at the end of, I think, the third. The fourth was when he started throwing in like the kicking game a little bit more, and there were moments where he was able to tag Volkanovski and kind of level the playing field, but he had to work very hard to make what I viewed as 2 rounds close, and he still clearly lost both of those rounds. It was just Volkanovski's night. He just wasn't going to be beaten on Saturday. Not by Max anyway. But
he maxed him, dude. He did to Max what Max does to other people. First round, Volkanovski knew he had that fight won 2 minutes into the first round when he just started screaming at Max, "I'm too fast for you. I'm too fast for you." And he wasn't even saying it aggressively. He was just saying, like, dude, like, this is what it is, as Max himself would say. I've improved more than you. I've got more facets to my game. I've got more power. I've got more speed with my hands. And I've got to be honest as well, better boxing fundamentals. A lot of what I thought Volkanovski did very well was set up angles of shots, whereas Max would come in quite square, and the shots are
well,
kind of coming
Max
out.
has to. He's got the longer, taller frame, but he's got the shorter like arm length. So where Volkanovski can use his movement to get inside and keep Max at the end of shots, Max does have to kind of get quite creative, and he needs to like close the distance with shots. And if he's not landing all of these shots and finishing up with powerful shots, all that's happening is he's trading 1 for 2 or 2 for 3, and
Yeah.
Volkanovski's getting the opportunities to land the damage because he's got the leverage in there as
Yep.
well. He's not having to punch down or from outside. When he pivots, he's already got the lower center of balance. He's already able to change direction a little better. Max is always kind of coming down over on things. So that speed advantage and just the difference in their frames, yeah, it's exactly how I saw it play out. He was able to put more volume and pressure on him, exact same way Max usually gets people out of there, or if not out of there, just
And the issue
stops it from
is
being
that
competitive.
really, without a grappling, an offensive grappling threat, and without that kind of Ortega level jiu-jitsu to create threats, it was, I mean, this kind of happened in the Rodriguez fight. Max was getting sort of outdone on the feet, but he had the ability to turn that into a grappling situation and then dominate in that range. And he just didn't have that option against Volkanovski. Volkanovski had that option against Max, and he's just too good, man. He's too good. He had a great night. Max had a bad night. Probably Max needed to have his best night on the same night that Volkanovski wasn't 100% if he was going to win this. History books are going to show what they are, man. Volkanovski, probably pound for pound best fighter in the UFC. And for Max, it's tough, man.
Yeah,
48% of his career losses are to Volkanovski. 3 out of 7. That's insane. Doesn't happen in
that
modern
can't be
MMA.
48. That's got to be a different number, right?
I just knew it was more than 40 and less than 50, so I just said
Oh,
48.
sorry. Yeah, it's
I didn't do the math.
yeah. Look, Holloway had an okay night. Volkanovski has a great night. Volkanovski's peaking right now. I guess we're going to talk about
At
that a little bit
34.
later on as well. But
Yeah,
that's
we'll get into
actually
that one.
kind of a good age for MMA athletes to be peaking. You think about the fact that he did kind of come across the combat sports a little later than most. It
True.
does fit. And again, whereas Max has been out injured or Max has been out waiting for fights, Max has really only had like that good cage time experience against Yair Rodriguez, and that was a fight that was uncomfortably close. Whereas
Yeah,
Volkanovski has just been kind of pushing from
the
strength to
zombie
strength,
fight.
dispatching legends, and he's just
Well,
peaking. That's all I can really say.
tonight,
It's just the right time for him to be fucking walking out there, stone cold psycho. And I love, he's got this way right. He's not the most eloquent of cunts, but everything he says makes perfect fucking sense. And once you just kind of put past the whole like, well, he's got more important shit on his mind right now, other than how his words say. He just wants to get his message out there. I just love the way he's like walking out for the fight, like, I love you, Australia. I know you're behind me. Fuck the booze. I don't care. Stand up for yourself. And everything about it's just kind of got that Rory McDonald vibe where it's like, huh, last time I saw you, I was looking down the sight of my rifle, but you didn't know that. Like, it's just a bit creepy, a bit unnerving, but ultimately super fucking positive. I love this guy. I love Max a little bit more, but I do love
yeah.
Volkanovski. And
Well,
I love when he just feels the need to like get on his podium and say some shit. I always like what he has to say.
well, I want to wind the clock back to about a year and a half ago. Pretty actually early into our podcast, after Max had fought Calvin Cater, and you and I were having an in-length conversation about not sparring, and you were talking about other guys that had stopped sparring in their training camps. They're vets, they know how to fight, all this kind of stuff. Don't want to take the unnecessary CTE without getting paid for it. Sensible, sensible, sensible. And what the general consensus seemed to be is that for about a year and a half, great. You've still got the timing, you're sharp, you feel great, you're not getting injuries. But eventually, timing starts to go. You're not doing it as frequently. You don't react as quickly. That quick timing, reaction time in the pocket counter shot, that stuff doesn't quite feel as natural because you're not doing it enough. Now, Max hasn't been sparring for over 2 years. And second Volkanovski fight looked amazing. For me, he won that fight still. Calvin Cater looks incredible. 11 months later, Yair Rodriguez, tough fight. Rodriguez is a beast on the feet. I have seen lesser fighters figure out how to deal with him on the feet. Seemed to be a bit of an off night for Max, but he found a way to win because he's Max. This fight, timing seemed off. rhythm seemed off, reaction time seemed off. I wonder whether that's a factor.
It could be.
Volkanovski sparring.
I'm willing to put it more on Volkanovski just being really on his fucking game and peaking at the right time, more than anything else. Plus, it is the third fight. 2 rounds in, they're at an hour of fight time. Um, when you both understand each other that well, the guy that's slightly faster is going to have a discernible advantage because you're both seeing it at the same time. It's just that one of you's able to implement it quicker. It's going to go that way. I feel bad for Max. Fucking is what it is. Remind me though to talk about this sparring thing again when we get to the Sean Strickland fight as well, because I have a lot of thoughts on the right way to go about sparring, and while hard sparring is necessary in places, too much of it will fuck you up in the same way and get you into bad habits in the same way as well. So, but yeah, like it's a tricky one. You've got to be doing all kinds of training all the time. You've got to be doing all kinds of sparring all the time. It's very hard to kind of pick and choose what kind of training you're doing when you're going up against killers, 2 or 3 times a year.
True. Let's move on to these other fights because we got a few things that we need to talk about. Sean Strickland versus Alex Pereira. Sean Strickland had the best press conference he could have possibly had. He literally made himself relevant and he talked himself into being in a title eliminator because before that press conference, Pereira got a title shot if he won. Strickland, no guarantees. He made sure that people were going to tune in if he won that fight on Saturday to watch him versus Izzy. I'll be honest, I wanted him to win that fight, particularly after that press conference, because I just knew the whole build-up would be way more entertaining. The press conferences, the interviews, all of that stuff would be way more entertaining. Maybe the fight would be worse, but I'd have a lot more entertainment building up to the fight. All I read is that he's training with Eblin. He just became the fucking Bellator middleweight champion. And Roy Nelson, and wrestling with Roy Nelson. I'm like, great. He's going to put his ego aside. He's going to wrestle. That's a really smart move against Alex Pereira. Even if you want to strike, throw a couple of early takedowns, get him thinking about that, get the hands a bit lower. He's not trying to land the left hook. He's trying to stop a takedown. Then you can start doing your thing. What I didn't expect him to do was slowly walk forwards, completely rigid, with no body movement, head movement, very obviously reaching out to parry with your right hand, looking to parry the jab constantly, just making it so obvious. I'm walking towards you and my hand's going to do this.
Well,
I'm walking
basically
towards
the
you and
way
my
he
hand's going
fights
to do
against
this.
everyone that isn't a more decorated striker than him. The way he
Yes.
basically tries to bully everyone. There are when Strickland's at his best, I love the way you've described it, just constantly with the right hand out trying to parry. When Strickland's at his best, he might as well be fighting with his fucking eyes shut. Because he just walks forward until you're like the perfect distance to be on the end of the 1-2, the 1-2, the 1-2. And that's how he fights you. And he seems to have this idea. You take a step backwards, that's bad for business. And when he's trying to bully people, yeah, his striking's quite, I wouldn't say basic, but he doesn't get exotic with it. He tries to just stay down that center line and just find the right moment to just kind of keep pushing and pushing until you're just eating his fists. As soon as Alex Pereira got him taking a step backwards, I was like, this is it now. This is make or break. Adapt your fucking game plan or you will lose this fight. And sure as shit, he went straight back to just trying to walk him down. And Pereira just feints that jab, clocks him with a fucking textbook left hook. You shouldn't be able to get your leg up and spin your hip around like that in a top level fight, in a title eliminator.
You shouldn't be able to land that left hook with no setup.
No, that was.
I know he faked the jab. I know he faked the jab, but I don't count that as a setup.
No, yeah. It was literally he was just trying to hide the overall kind of movement, and he never should have gotten away with that. That Sean, dude, you were silly. He knows that.
Watching the fight next to Sly literally just got back from work, as this fight was starting, and as they're doing the ring, all I'm saying is he's gonna wrestle. He's going to wrestle. He's going to wrestle. He's going to wrestle. Fake the 1-2, shoot for the takedown. Because my logic would be, even if you don't succeed with the first takedown, you just immediately want to put it into Pereira's mind that he's got to wrestle today. And as soon as I saw what he was doing, I was just like, it's over. It's a matter of time. This is, if it's not now, it's in 30 seconds, it's in 40 seconds, it's in 2 minutes. It's coming.
Yeah, Sean doesn't look like he believes he can win this fight anymore.
No. And do you know what's really... I mean, it was a stupid left hook to get hit by. And fair play to Pereira. He landed it well. The 2 straights to follow it up were so accurate, so well placed. You can see what level this guy's at. And listen, he's got an 80-inch... Is it an 80-inch reach? It's fucking close to an 80-inch reach.
It's like, yeah, he's got long arms.
He's got long arms. I'm curious to see, because you were going to talk about sort of hard sparring. And my guess, I just want to see if I can predict this. My guess as to what you're going to say is that because when you are the hard sparrer, it's very unlikely that other people will engage as hard as you. They'll kind of let you run that sparring a little bit. You get used to bullying people. So all of your sparring, the only thing that you're ever doing is being on the front foot. Whereas when you go for lighter technical sparring, you will change and it will be about position and you work all the rest. And that's the stuff he should have been working on in this Pereira fight. Staying off the center line, faking, baiting the left hook to come so you can do something afterwards, mixing the wrestling in.
Yeah.
And well, none of that.
Yeah, if you're doing light technical sparring, it's faster, you are lighter on your feet, your movement is better. You also put more rounds in, ultimately. Not just in that hour-long session, 2-hour, 3-hour-long session, in that day, in that week, in that month, in that 10 to 12-week period. It fucking adds up very, very quickly. And if you're doing hard sparring all the time, right, if you feel like you're a different fighter after you get clocked in the face one time real good, or you eat a real good body shot, you need to do some hard sparring it sounds stupid, but to toughen yourself up, just to understand how to fight through that uncomfortable situation. Yeah. And sometimes it's good to do hard sparring so you don't think you're Superman. You understand how quickly you can, lose all of your ability just getting rocked a couple of times real clean. It's important to do some hard sparring. It's important to know how to work positions and how to work traps and the footwork when you're loading up on shots. It is also very important to do light sparring, because otherwise you form bad habits. You're not getting as much sharpness in, you're not getting as much footwork and head movement in. And that's what I saw from Strickland. And this is what Strickland says he does. And this is what Sam Alvey told us Strickland does. And, there's not a lot of other fighters where you see them with knockout highlight footage from sparring sessions. You're not getting the most out of your sparring partners, Sean. That's fucking dumb. It's nice to be the big dog. It's nice to walk into fights being, I'm a fucking psycho, no one frightens me. But you eat that fucking left hook when everybody saw it coming. It was a nice setup, but you never should have been at that range. You never in a million years should have been at that fucking range. You look like a mug.
Well, I don't know if it was Josh Thompson or Big John or Ariel, but after the fight, somebody reached out to Johnny Eblin, who'd been training with them, obviously, and said, "Hey, Johnny, was that the plan?" He was like, yeah, that's literally exactly what Sean said he was going to do. He just didn't believe that the power was real. He just thought he was going to walk him down and just fight him. And I think this is the problem, because I think when you're a fighter, and particularly somebody like Sean, where you fought a lot of good guys, you fought Hermanson, I think you can get caught up in this idea of when people talk about power punchers and real hard hitters and knockout artists, you can rationalize it as, well, everybody hits hard. I've fought lots of guys who hit hard.
Yeah.
Until you actually come across that guy where it's like, no, it's different. It's not the hook lands and you feel a bit rocked, but you take a few steps back and you know how to get at your back composure and all that. It's like, no. If it lands clean, it is over. You will not get out of that situation. And I think it's an eye-opener. It'll be interesting to see how he reacts from this. Is he going to brush it off and just say shit happens? Or is he going to go, oh, okay, there's some people that are in a whole different realm. I need to be a little bit more well-rounded. If I actually want
Hang on, let's be real. Everybody knows the kid can grapple. Everybody
yeah.
knows this kid is dangerous, like on the mat. It's just I don't even think that he necessarily has bad takedowns, but it's just knowing when to throw the takedowns in. You know, GSP came into MMA and learnt takedowns just from being a student of the game because so much of it is just setting it up and timing it and being patient. He already has the fucking skill set. He just needs to fucking tidy up his
Just do it.
attitude. This whole like, if I just bully people, I'm gonna get to the top of the tree that way. It's like, no,
Doesn't
in your
work.
head you told yourself that you're tough, and you told yourself you're a bully, and it's a seductive way of thinking. You're letting that attitude take credit for your success, and that's why you're a fucking mug. If you went,
Well,
I'm the
also,
one that got it done, I'm the one that put the fucking hours in, I'm the one with the skill set, and it doesn't fucking matter what I say before the fight, what I say during the fight, all that matters is how I respond and act during the fight, then he's literally, he will not be stood in his own way anymore, and we can really see how good he is. He's not the only one. This is a problem that all athletes across all sports have.
yeah.
All people across all fucking things have. We all fucking get some stuff wrong. We all sucker ourselves into believing the wrong things about our own success and failures. But he
True.
has the fucking skills. There's nothing he needs to work on outside of his like overall game plan and execution. You know.
I think the real shame of it is that he should have at least had this awareness. The only reason the UFC have booked me as the one who fights Alex Pereira is because they think I'm the one guy who's not going to try and take him down.
Yeah.
Just knowing that, like, the matchmakers are intelligent people. Yeah, they get some fights wrong, but generally, they have people they're pushing. They have people that they want to win fights. If you suddenly have a guy that's matched up against this person, it's like why did Yuri Prochaska fight Dominic Reyes in his second UFC fight as a title eliminator? Yeah, it's because Dominic Reyes was right at the top, but also what was Dominic Reyes not going to do? Take him down. That was the thing they weren't sure about Jiri. So, and at the time, Jan was champ, and they could think, or it was going to be Izzy, and they're like, okay, we don't have to worry about that. It's lots of strikers. We don't have too many grapplers. But your best moment of fight week can't be the press conference. It's an important moment. If it's your best moment, something has gone horrifically wrong.
Yeah. At the same time, though, you can't be modest in the press conference, have a lights out performance, and then lament afterwards. Shit, I really wish I'd fucking sold myself before the fight so I could capitalize. He looks like a twat when
No.
he runs his mouth, but it's the same as Izzy selling the fights. If you want to fucking reap in everything you can get, and these athletes are chronically underpaid, if you really want to capitalize on your value, you have to do the shit talking before, or something. You need to leverage and hype in some way. And then,
Well,
if it comes good, then you're like Mystic Mac. If you get mugged off, and it's like my favorite one ever, great guy as well, but it's just the perfect one that I can ever think of. Jake Ellenberger's little like VT intro into his fight with Wonderboy, karate, cut to karate kick, knockout. You know, just couldn't be worse. You know what you say before the fight and what actually happens, but you gotta fucking say this shit. It just is what it is.
true. But I think the point is it can't be your best moment. Vis-a-vis,
Yeah.
Izzy was made to look a bit dumb and was kind of owned a little bit at the press conference. He ends up keeping his belt. Sean Strickland smashes the press conference, isn't getting the title shot. So it's, whatever you say, you got to perform on the night. That's what matters. Alex Pereira is going to be there. The build-up is going to be dull as fuck. All they're going to do is keep saying that he's beat Izzy twice in kickboxing. And obviously Pereira doesn't really speak English. So the fight itself should be good. I actually favor Pereira at the moment. I think he's got no takedown threat from Izzy. Although how good would it be if in that fight starts, Izzy just fakes a run two, double leg takes him down, pulls an armbar. I would be so proud of Izzy. That would be a moment where you're just like, okay, now you're the man. If you were to do something like that, almost more than if
Izzy
he knocks
has
him
to
out.
do something like that. Just like why wouldn't you? Uh, Alex Bahia is the one that's going to be feeling all the pressure the second it becomes a mixed martial arts contest. It's just why would you not tap into those mind games? I'd be
True.
disappointed if he doesn't, but I'm sure he will.
You're a lot more. You're a lot more confident on Izzy to win than I am in that fight.
Izzy lost twice to this guy in kickboxing with a kickboxing rule set with kickboxing gloves. Um, this was a long time ago. Izzy's come a long way, and Izzy has gone from strength to strength and really impressed me with his level of striking in an MMA environment. Alex Bahia has shown flashes of greatness, but overall, I think he's just a guy that Izzy ultimately should be able to dispatch uh, in the octagon with 4 ounce gloves on, with the threat of grappling. Yeah, I just don't see Izzy getting caught in the same way.
He has more time.
Yep.
Kickboxing, even world title kickboxing fights, I think they're only 3 rounds of 3 minutes. You have to be aggressive. You have to put pressure on. Izzy's got a bigger space to work with in the octagon. He doesn't have to rush. He's got more weapons of attack. He's got more areas of attack.
Smaller gloves. His opponent's got smaller gloves to parry and block with. There's just I haven't seen enough from Bahia to be like, well, yeah, he's just so much better of an athlete than Izzy that Izzy's really gonna have a fucking issue with this fight.
He's got the power factor. He's got the power factor though. That's the difference. Izzy has to be perfect for the whole fight. He only has to get it right once.
Oof. I don't know. Sean Strickland gave him a lot of looks, and he took his time with it. I don't know that is because Alex Bahia was, being arrogant and being complacent. I think that's because he's just human, and he needs to get that perfect shot. He needs to have everything kind of lined up for him to get that knockout shot. I don't think Izzy's going to give that to him. But you know what? We're going to get to that when we get to that, because I don't think there's any way they don't make that fight next.
It's the next fight. We know 100%. Let's move away from an impressive knockout and let's talk about the best fight of the night. Robbie Lawler, Brian Barberena, absolutely brought it. Great fight. Hate seeing Robbie Lawler lose, particularly like that. But Barberena's a tough son of a bitch, man. He doesn't go out easy. 8 big shots, still was making reads, started throwing those elbows in there, and it changed the fight.
Yeah, he's not Nick Diaz. He came ready to fight all 3 rounds. I thought Robbie had him in first round. Not gonna lie. I think even looking at Brian Barberena's face, I think Barberena thought he had him. Barberena sticks in there, made good work of the short elbows. Just this was a fun fight. I still think Volkanovsky Holloway was a little better for my money, but for just a straight up slugfest, can't complain. This delivered. This was vintage Lawler.
So glad that they re-signed Barberena. That guy belongs in the UFC as long as he wants to be there. He brings it every time. I can't believe they were going to let him run this contract out before that Matt Brown fight.
It depends how much money he's on. Like, I didn't think they were going to re-sign Jim Miller. They have re-signed Jim Miller officially now, right?
I think so, yeah. 3-fight winning streak, all by finishes. Fuck yeah, they've re-signed Jim Miller.
No, you got to think about it though. It's if you came in if you didn't basically come in through the Contender Series, your job is constantly at risk. Felipe Colares lost a good fight to Chase Hooper, coming out like he's on another fucking level, and despite previously impressing, got cut. And I can't believe Colares was on that much fucking money. He was worth sticking around. Barberena's never going to be champ. Go on, sorry.
I was going to say, I don't think you're acting like these contender guys are safe. I think they're the ones in the most amount of danger. Like, usually you get like a 3 and out. But the contender guys, it feels like, particularly if they come in on short notice or something like that,
they get 2.
It's like sometimes 1, dude.
Sometimes 1, but if you're on the wrong money these days and you lose a fight, or if you turn down a fight and then lose a fight, it's 1 and done. They are getting brutal with it. So yeah, I think no one's safe, but the Contender Series guys, basically, you do have that option. If you're on a lower contract, if you're on like 20 and 20, 15 and 15, anything below that, As long as you say yes to fighting whoever they want you to fight, you earn some good grace, and they'll let you. If you have a good performance, they'll let you lose some fights. Everybody else, one bad performance or one loss, that could be it these days because
Yeah.
they are really sharpening their fucking
Well,
pencils. They like bringing in the big profit, and they found the way to do it, and they know it's not going to last forever.
can I say what I think the factor more is with a Jim Miller? You've got a guy that used to be ranked inside of the top 15, maybe not a title challenger, but probably in the Zuffa times might have been sort of paid more than his specific rank value because they understood all the other elements that you get with Jim Miller. And now obviously he's an unranked fighter. So it might be that the issue is that he's obviously expecting a kind of like, a bit of a legends contract. And maybe they were trying to shortchange him there. Maybe that's where the separation was.
Oh, I'm sure they offered him some bullshit like contracts before the Cerrone fight, before it all wound down. But anyway, get to it when we get to it. We
We'll
don't
get to it.
we fucking go off piece so quickly when we ain't got Sly here keeping us on the straight
I
and
know.
narrow.
Let's
Lawler,
talk.
Barberena, great fucking
Great
fight.
fight.
Any more thoughts?
Nope. I had great hopes for the rest of the card at this point, and this fight was much needed after the unfortunate start to our main card, which
Oof.
really, I think that was, it's hard because particularly the way the UFC builds their main cards for pay-per-views, it's not the fifth fight that they consider the fifth best fight on the pay-per-view card. They put that first fight there to get bums and seats. They put the guy that they're building, the guy that they want to be the next star, significant fight, absolute barn burner, to guarantee that people are tuning in for that first fight on the pay-per-view rather than just the main events. This fight had so much implications for Pedro, for Sean O'Malley. Really disappointing. It is what it is, man. Eye pokes happen. His cornea got scratched. I thought Pedro won the first round, but then again, in all the fights that I've seen Pedro lose against high level competition, he usually wins the first round, and then the fight kind of gets away from him.
Well, he'll
So
usually win 2 rounds and get fucked by the judges. That's the Pedro special. But
sometimes,
he's a gamer. He gets off to good starts. He's not head and shoulders above anyone. He just tends to have good game plans and he sets things up well. Um, I did like the low kicks, the leg attacks, and the fact that he kept changing stance, so that the outside leg kick was always there for the rear leg. So just constantly looking to optimize power with naked leg kicks. I thought would be a riskier strategy than it really was. But that really fucking frustrated O'Malley. He had it working for him. Eye poke's a hell of a shame. I'm pretty sure they're just going to rebook this one though. I know
they
Cejudo
have
was
to,
saying he
man.
wants that O'Malley fight, but I don't think that's a real thing.
Cejudo would rape O'Malley, man. For me, this is a real sign that like all of that extra stuff that we love to see from O'Malley was much harder to do once you're fighting one of the real guys in the division. All of a sudden, he's not landing the rights, he's not landing the 1-2s, he's not styling in the same way. Now, the fight was really only just getting to that point where it was really starting to get started, and guys were, Pedro was starting to engage a bit more, and O'Malley was starting to try some stuff. So it does need to happen, but I think what it shows is he's not going to run through everybody, not by any stretch of the imagination. Sean O'Malley, he's probably in that top 10 level, but it's tough fights against these guys.
Maybe
Real tough fight.
it's like the Cheeto fight. I haven't seen enough of it. I don't think that strategy was going to work for another round. I think Munoz was trying to bait O'Malley into biting on something so that he could either look to take the fight to the mat or look to get inside with the body shots like he did against Frankie Edgar. But he obviously this was just this wasn't like Plan A. This was like Phase A of Plan A. I wanted to see how it was going to go, and I think O'Malley has got the skill set and the ability to adapt. I just think we're going to see this fight again, and we're either going to see that O'Malley is legit and he can adapt to these issues, and he just doesn't feel the need to rush things, and he'll take the time to like assess what's going on, and he will throw a round away like that, which isn't necessarily the worst strategy. Or we're going to see that Pedro Munoz is even more underrated than we thought he was. But
True.
That's the fight that's going to happen next. I don't even
Can I
think
tell you what?
Cejudo wants a bantamweight fight. I think if Cejudo is coming back, it's going to be for 45, but we'll see.
There's a route there now. There's definitely a route on the Pedro O'Malley thing. I'll tell you where that fight's not going to take place as the opening fight of a pay-per-view card. UFC's not going to risk it. They're not going to risk it. They can put him maybe co-main on a Fight Night or something like that.
Has O'Malley ever fought on a fight night? I think he's exclusively fought on pay-per-views. I think if they give him a fight night, it's got to be a main event. But I wouldn't be surprised if this does line up, if this isn't the opening fight on another pay-per-view towards the end of the year.
We will see. We will see. We're going to run through the prelims quite quickly, but there are a couple of significant things we need to talk about. First things first, Jalen Turner just smoked Riddell. Just absolutely smoked him. He's such a problem. When you jiu-jitsu, you can be that aggressive with your jiu-jitsu if the fight gets close, and you're that tall and long, you can strike long. It's not a lot of areas for guys to have tremendous success in.
No, it's hard to fight against the guy who's 6'3" with that kind of power. He's just an absolute beast, and you kind of forget, like, you got Joel Alvarez in this division as well. The 6'3" guys at 155 is insane. I mean, fucking Ian Gary's 6'3" at 170 looks lean as fuck, and then you remember that there's the guys that are just as big doing it 15 pounds lower down.
Yeah.
It hurts my body just to think about it. But yeah, Jalen Turner is phenomenal. I feel bad for Riddell, you know. It's just one of those quick finishes. Quake shouldn't take it to heart too much. Jalen Turner's got a great platform to build from here. Do you think they start pushing him towards the top 15 next year?
He's already going to be in the top 15, dude. Riddell was ranked number 12.
I mean, in terms of his opponents, though. Obviously, like,
yes,
getting someone in the top 15, like, is a big sign, but it doesn't necessarily mean, especially in stacked divisions when you're coming up, you kind of get that number next to your name, and then you got to reach down for a little bit. You got to take a few.
He's a top 10 guy. I think there's guys in the top 10 he beats right now without even a question in my mind. I think he beats Tony hands down.
Yeah.
I think
Tony's not long for this world, though. Tony shouldn't be competing professionally in any sport, let alone a combat sport at this stage.
Fiziev, RDA, I think both have a real tough time against Jalen Turner. Real tough time.
RDA does, for sure.
So there's guys he can beat for sure. I don't know where he's come from. I remember seeing him fight back in 2018 and not being that impressed. And suddenly he's a killer. Well, he's improved so much.
I think they keep letting him take fights against guys that don't have a number next to their name, get a little bit of a streak going. I don't know if they really kind of give him the big push until the end of next year, unless he comes in short notice and fills in for someone. But we'll see. 55's changing a lot. There's a lot changing in the guard at 55. And shit,
true.
We might have Volkanovsky and Holloway in that weight class next year anyway, so...
I don't know if they want to go up looking at some of the guys emerging. It's give it 2 years and it's not going to be the Chandlers and the Poiriers in that top 5. It's going to be a whole new beast.
One of them's got to go.
I don't know how well either one does. I think there's guys they could beat now, but I think once you have Islam fully established at the top, and Oliveira and Gamrot and Guram and Ismagulov and all the other scary people, I don't think they'd match up well. But that's just me. Let's talk about some retirements. Let's talk about the retirements next to each other rather than chronologically. Let's talk about the important one first. Jim Miller, Donald Cerrone, Legends fight. Winner would have the most wins in the UFC. I thought Cerrone fought really well until he slipped. I didn't think he was having a bad night. I thought he was keeping Miller at range, threatening submissions when he did get taken down a couple of times.
Yeah,
he's got a really good guillotine, man.
Looked like
he
a
slipped.
Guy that should have been turning the fight down if he wanted to take it at 170. Miller, for me, looked bigger and healthier at 170 than Donald. and I think the food poisoning had way more of an effect. Because it's not just the fact that like you're building towards being able to make the weight at that point, but physically you're just looking to peak at that point. And for you to not be peaking but to be physically sick and then trying to fight again 2 weeks later, I changed my pick originally from I picked Miller when I thought it was at 55. I realized it was 70. I thought shit, I got to stick with Cerrone because both of them are gonna
Uh,
have the same problems with having the fight pushed back, right? But Cerrone,
Listen,
he
man,
looked
I
like he'd
think
failed a cut for 35 or 45 and come in trying to fight at 70.
I
He didn't look great to me
I
physically.
I disagree. I disagree. I think he's old. I think he's demotivated. I think he knew he was going to retire. I still think that he probably would have won the first round on my scorecard. I thought he didn't look bad at all. He slips. He gets caught in a guillotine.
He
I
didn't
think.
really slip. He lands a head kick at the same time that Jim lands a blocked body kick, and Jim's able to just power through and then take the guillotine from there. But that was, that's how a guy should be looking in the fifth round, not in the second round. For me,
Well, listen.
I'm
I
not I'm
think
not so happy. I'm not so
he's
easy to just go. It was a slip. It was Jim fucking wanted it more. You should have had Jim bang to rights there, and Jim ends up finishing you.
well. I agree with you on the wanting it more because I think even after, let's say that you get knocked down and you slip, I think a more motivated, not knowing he's going to retire Cerrone, reacts and moves his head and rolls or pulls guard way more quickly. Whereas he kind of slipped, and it just seems to be this kind of like in the same moment that Jim Miller is reacting straight away and looking for the neck, Cerrone's just kind of sort of like getting his bearings a little bit, like, oh, I've slipped, I better get myself back up. And listen, it didn't surprise me that he retired. I think it's good that he's retired. He's kind of seemed happy about it. He doesn't love it anymore. That's his words. And he's getting a couple of acting gigs. So I think it's time. Move on. You've done this long enough. You've taken enough damage. It probably isn't in your heart anymore. And, it's funny. They asked him, when did you know you were going to retire? When was it really done? And he said, before the McGregor fight.
Well, I mean, to be honest, he probably should have retired a little while ago. The thing is, he's one of these guys that, although he is a fan favorite, the more you know about him, the more you realize he is actually a huge piece of shit,
Wait,
and
wait,
he's
wait,
gonna
wait,
get
wait, we
cancelled
don't, we
sooner or
don't need to.
later.
We don't need to talk
No,
about that. This is
he
a
needs to make
celebration of
all the
Cerrone.
money acting that he can now because he's gonna get cancelled sooner rather than later. So he needs to
This
fucking get his retirement money in.
Congratulations on your career, Donald Cowboy Cerrone. You will be missed in the octagon. It is time for you to go, but we hope you ride off to the sunset happily. All positive in retirement
What's this
for
weed?
this man.
Glad to see you gone, Donald. Take care.
All right. Well, Jim Miller's now got the most wins in UFC history. He was classy in it. Let Donald have his moment first. What would you rather see, him versus Joe Lozon again, or would you rather see them rebook Bobby Green?
I think probably the Bobby Green fight. To be honest, I think Jim's just kind of at this stage in his career where he seems to have figured out the Lyme disease and everything else, and he's just the best version of himself that apparently he can be at this age. Joe Lozon, big question mark, and I thought the Cerrone booking made a lot of sense. The Jim Miller one, not so much, especially after what I just saw.
Yeah, I
I
get you.
think Bobby Green, because I think Bobby Green's got a good shot at winning that fight, and I think Bobby Green deserves that name
A top
more than
15
Joe
guy,
Lozon
yeah.
does right now. So that's what I
And
want
the
to see.
name. Fair point. Let's talk about the other retirement because this is the one where the performance really pissed me off. Jessica Eye loses to Macy Barber, retires in the octagon. We had two retirements that night. Obviously, Cowboys being a bit more significant. The way Jessica Eye fought, she fought like somebody that knew she was going to retire and just decided she was going to get through the fight, taking as little damage as humanly possible. That's what it felt like. Because Jessica Eye's not a. Well, she was diving in for that clinch. I would have thought it was her striking that would get her the win in this fight, not being in the clinch, which is Macy Barber's, bread and butter to a certain extent. That's where she feels most comfortable. So I just felt she knew she was going to go. She didn't want to have her last fight be her getting the shit beaten out of her. So she just dived in for that close contact clinch and held on. trying to get through the 15 minutes. What was your thoughts on this one?
I thought she did quite well in the clinch. I thought she was landing some good shots and she was frustrating Barber. It was just those key moments where Barber was able to hit her on the break or work in the elbows. Because there seems to be a lot of camps that are still caught up on the old way, the old scoring criteria, the old kind of approach to like how a judge is going to be viewing the fight. And we just it took too long to change, but the judges have changed, and it seems to be taking the fighters and the training camps a little longer to catch on to it. But I thought Jessica Rai looked like a bit of a throwback fighter, looking to control the fight by keeping her up on the cage. Macy Barber got some great experience in, some much needed experience, and did a good job of staying on her feet, landing the damaging shots. Jessica Rai, I thought was going to do a little better in that fight. I didn't really see it as so much that like she quit. I've just seen her always being somewhat of a limited fighter that was always tougher than she was technical or athletic, and you know Macy Barber can be an issue for women in that division. So I think it was a good enough fight for Barber, about as good enough fight I thought I was going to give her. It kind of just played out how I thought it might. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
I's been fighting for a long time.
Time to pack it in.
Yeah, I thought it was quite awkward when she was asking Joy for the podcast. I don't know if that's really going to
Podcast.
happen. I don't think it even means what it used to mean, 5-10 years ago. So, but shit, it means something to her. So fuck it. I hope she does get it.
We will see. But to your retirements, that's always interesting. What else happened on this card? We obviously had a great fight between Duplessis and Tavares.
Do you want
That was
to? Because we had just before that
about
we
Ian
had
Gary.
Ian Gary against Gabe Green.
We're going over time though. I'm trying just to really quickly run through these because there's not too much
All right,
noticeable.
let me bring them up. Let's just quickly run through them in order then.
Listen,
So
Ian Gary looked good, very technical. Love his combinations shots at range.
Yeah, I mean, Green did a great job creating a lot of pressure right off the bat, just with the jab and the low kick. There are definitely holes in Gary's game, but as soon as he kind of opened up, the difference in his size and speed really was the difference, especially in the third round. Good fight. Fair play to Gary.
Duplessis, Tavares, really fun fight. I thought Tavares was going to win it after the first round. Duplessis pulled it back well. Fair play.
Yeah, definitely very inefficient with his movement, but I don't know. I thought Tavares looked great in the first round, and then just couldn't seem to beat a tired Duplessis to the punch after that, and just got hit with some heavy shots. So that was that.
Early prelims, bit of a snoozer between Muniz and Hall, but Hall's pretty good defensively. Muniz was winning the fight comfortably.
Hall made it that kind of fight. Let's be real. Muniz doesn't have to rush things. He is so good at taking the armbar from that back position and working those scrambles. Once you're in that position, just fucking hold on, I guess.
Hall seemed very tired, very early.
He's old as shit now as well.
I know, it looks like it's catching up with him. Opening fight of the night, good finish. Stoliarenko finally gets a win in the UFC. Brutally armbars Jessica Royce-Clark, whose arm is definitely dislocated.
How do you feel about the whole snap before they tap?
She was tapping as it was snapping. So here's what I feel. As soon as the tap lands, I think a lot of fighters can ease or let go of the bar, and she didn't. She just kept yanking it.
There are examples of fighters letting go when their opponent taps before the referee has stopped it, and there have been examples of people getting away with that. Who was it? Matt Lindland lied about tapping, and then immediately got tapped out again. And there have been other examples where fighters have almost gotten away with it, or have kind of half gotten away with it.
It was nasty though. I felt bad for Jessica Royce-Clark. That's a nasty injury to get in a loss that you suffered in 40 seconds.
It sucks. Women are very flexible. I don't hate Stoliarenko for it. I don't hate Stoliarenko for what she said. It looks bad and sounds bad because Clark's going to be out for a little while. But, I unless they would open up something where refs could use replays more freely for like taps on submission attempts and stuff like that, then I think it is on the fighter to just kind of hold it until the ref separates them.
Yeah, I
It's
get you.
it's hard to gauge exactly how much force to use to make them tap without it actually fucking hyperextending or breaking. It's really hard.
Okay.
And if it's going to cost you a fight, right? If Stolyarenko doesn't hold on to that, the tap doesn't get seen, or because she starts to loosen up the second she feels the tap, maybe the ref doesn't have time to register it, and then Stolyarenko gets knocked out brutally and has CTE for the rest of her life. That's 1,000 times worse in my mind. It's on the ref. Yes, when a fighter snaps them like that when they're tapping, and they say, well, I'm not taking chances, it sounds bad, but it's better than brain damage, and we don't take that seriously enough. For me, I'm good with it.
All in all, 6 out of 10 for me, this card, which isn't bad. 6 out of 10. This is a good average card. Had its moments, but I'll say 6 out of 10 pay-per-view. I won't say in comparison to like what a 6 out of 10 fight night would be where there's less expectation. But it's followed 3 weeks of like 9, 10 out of 10s. So it was always going to be a tough sell. But it is what it is. The champions stayed the champions. The expected number one contender is still became the number one contender. And